Hello, I'm Greg Powell, and welcome back to the Thoughtful Techie Cloud YouTube channel. If you're new here, what we talk about here are AWS cloud computing best practices, help you learn AWS cloud computing, and get you on your way to your cloud journey. Today, we're going to talk about AWS global infrastructure. To start, AWS has the most secure, extensive, reliable cloud infrastructure out there. So, why does cloud infrastructure matter? Well, it matters because without it, you can't build too much. So let's get into the details. Okay, where I would like to start is with regions. Right now, AWS has 26 launched regions at the time of this recording, and this number is always increasing. So what is a region? A region is simply an area where AWS operates. Within an AWS region, there are availability zones. Availability zones are comprised of one or more data centers. An availability zone is a fault-tolerant construct, so it has its own separate power and cooling from other availability zones. The availability zones build into regions. So you have regions, then your AZs are up under the regions, and then under the availability zones are data centers. That's the connection there. Then there are something called points of presence. Now notice I skipped over a few things because I don't want to confuse you. I want to talk about the points of presence next because outside of your regions and availability zones, points of presence are aligned with CloudFront, the content delivery network, and those help to achieve better performance and lower latency at the edge with the points of presence. So as far we've talked about the regions, availability zones, and points of presence. These are the classic AWS infrastructure components. Now, things have evolved over time, so we have some additional areas of infrastructure to talk about. There are two things, one called local zones and the other called wavelength zones. So a local zone is similar to an availability zone. However, they are even closer and can achieve lower single-digit latency because these local zones are even closer to customers, potentially, based on their geographic locations. So good use cases for local zones would be media and entertainment companies, gaming companies, just to name a few, or any use case where single-digit millisecond latency is required. Most times, regions and availability zones are more than perfect, but only for the most strict, lowest latency requirements. Local zones would come in handy there. Now, wavelength zones are 5G wireless zones. So if you have applications that run off of 5G, particularly in the mobile realm, wavelength zones would be great. What I want to point out to you, as I mentioned earlier, the global infrastructure at AWS is always expanding. 8 announced regions are on the way, along with 32 additional announced local zones in the pipeline. Looking at some facts here, 2 times more regions with multiple AZs than the next largest cloud provider. That's definitely very impressive. 245 countries and territories served by AWS global infrastructure. And let's look at the direct connect locations. That's the last thing on here that I didn't talk about. Direct connect is a direct private connection between your facility, whether it's an on-premises data center or a co-located environment, for example, directly into cloud. This is a component that is used for hybrid cloud computing. This topic is a separate YouTube video altogether, and it's something that I will potentially create in the future. If that's something you would want to see, let me know in the comments if you want to know more about AWS hybrid cloud computing. All right, so here's another interesting stat by the Magic Quadrant for Cloud Infrastructure. This came out in 2021. This is a report from the Gartner Magic Quadrant, which ranks AWS as a leader in cloud infrastructure and platform services across all cloud providers. This is definitely a very impressive achievement. Now let's look at the AWS Global Infrastructure Map. As I mentioned earlier, AWS Cloud currently spans 84 availability zones and 26 geographic areas around the world. Now, more on those announced plans for 24 availability zones and 8 more regions. Those are going to be sprinkled about Australia, Canada, India, Israel, New Zealand, Spain, Switzerland, and the UAE. Quite impressive here. Let's just click on North America, for example. North America has 25 availability zones within 7 geographic regions and 44 edge network locations and 2 regional edge cache locations. So this is just North America alone. I'll spare you clicking on all these, but I do encourage you to go to the website here to check this out. And like I say, if you have a cloud workload you want to host, you're going to get great performance and low latency because you can choose exactly where in the world, literally where in the world, you want to host that application, which is very cool. Now, let's look at some of the benefits of the AWS Global Infrastructure. Security is job number one. So you benefit from AWS's economies of scale, and you get the best security on the platform because AWS has done all the heavy lifting there. The availability of the AWS platform is very high. It includes multiple AZs, which are fully isolated partitions of the infrastructure down the board. Performance is great. This is achieved with redundant 100 gigabit Ethernet network backbone, often providing many terabits of capacity between regions, local zones, wavelength telco providers. This is just mind-blowing. Now, I mentioned here earlier the global footprint. AWS has the largest global footprint of any cloud provider, and it's continually growing and scaling. Speaking of scale, the scalability of the global infrastructure enables companies to be extremely flexible and take advantage of the conceptually infinite scalability of the cloud. This is just incredible to me personally as a technologist, how AWS continues to stay ahead of the capacity demands for their services and just continues to scale out as if the capacity of the cloud has no limits. And then the flexibility. The AWS Global Infrastructure gives you the flexibility of choosing how and where you want to run your workloads. When you do, using the same networks, control plane, APIs, and AWS services. So I hope you enjoyed this short video on AWS Global Infrastructure. Let me know down in the comments your feedback on what you thought. And also, feel free to make requests on what videos you want to see me do next. And remember, don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you can be notified as soon as I drop all these AWS Cloud Computing best practice videos. Thank you and take care.